All right, so by now you should have done your very first LearnSmart task. One thing to keep in mind is that anytime you're doing a LearnSmart task, you're in the Smart Book, and basically that's you in class. So everything that Lawhead says to you, he might say to his own students if he's still teaching in class. So that is the classroom experience for you, or at least part of it, because I create a lot of my own stuff to give you minds-on opportunities. Like the soft talk modules are very minds-on. You do a little bit of reading, and then you have kinesthetic activities where you can move sorting cards around, you can drag and drop. So there's that kind of experience that I bring to the class. And then the Lawhead part is mostly, of course, lecture with some review questions sprinkled in. I don't really like the way they say, let's practice now, because I'm like, well, what are we practicing? So if what they mean is recall and remembering facts that were given to you about philosophers or philosophy or some theory, that's fine. They don't really have you apply anything or have you do any kind of higher level critical thinking stuff in the Smart Book practices, at least not the last practice items that I looked at. They're also not very comprehensive. As you know, I like to be very detailed in my quizzes and reviews to make sure that you get all the points. I am detail oriented. I like to make sure that we review all of the main points. Because if you lack precision in your understanding, then you may not get the kind of answer or understanding that I'm looking for you to develop as a philosophy student. One thing in particular that I want you to pay attention to is that sometimes, they might just gloss over something or give you one quiz item over something that deserves much more treatment. So, for example, if I remember correctly, I just redid the what they call practice, which is basically a reading review myself for the reading that you just did. And they only, if I recall correctly, they only had one question about a branch of philosophy, and I think it was on epistemology, and a question in a philosophical or an epistemological question, and a non-philosophical or non-epistemological question. Well, they introduce 7 or 8 branches to you, and they give you tons of examples of questions that are philosophical, non-philosophical, and then, epistemological, non-epistemological, metaphysical, non-metaphysical, and yet they only include 1 or 2 items in the quote-unquote practice. What I would recommend you do is create a lot of your own quiz items based on that. This will help you as you prepare for the test. So if you see a question, that touches on 2 pages of reading, but they only give you 1 question, you might say, well, that's not a lot of review. Maybe I should create some more review and practice items myself, so to speak. I'm wondering if by practice they mean practice test, or the idea that your professor might give you a quiz and these kinds of questions might help you. I guess that's okay. Now, one thing that I want to distinguish is between what might be called propositional knowledge and skill-based knowledge. So in this class, a lot of what you're getting in the book is called propositional knowledge. And what that means is that you're getting knowledge about philosophy. For example, that philosophy has 6 or 7 main branches. That philosophy is about beliefs, that Socrates was an ancient philosopher. You'll be getting propositional knowledge to the effect that, there's a view called dualism, there's a view called materialism. And these are very important things, because without facts, without propositional knowledge, you can't go on to apply, to think, to evaluate. So that's also important when it comes to like the argument terms and concepts. You have to keep the logician's definition of argument and what a premise and a conclusion are in mind. So those are facts about argument. That's propositional knowledge about argument. Without that propositional knowledge about argument, without remembering what the definition is, without this, what the steps, the strategies are for analyzing and clarifying an argument, you can't apply. And so sometimes I'll see that students are like, well, why do we have to remember so much? Why do we have to remember definitions? Why do we have to remember the steps? And that's because, and they'll say, like, we should be applying and synthesizing and evaluating. Well, what are you applying? How are you evaluating? You have to have some basic facts about philosophy and how to do it and how to go about it in order to, do those higher level thinking skills. So there is no applying, there is no evaluating without basic propositional knowledge about argument, about theories, about philosophy. And so what the book is good at doing is giving you that propositional knowledge, and it will start to give you and go into, when it goes into the theories, it'll show you or demonstrate how one might go about evaluating an argument, evaluating a theory, So I guess that's a little side detour that I took, something that came up for me talking about your first LearnSmart task. In any case, just remember that the Smart Book / LearnSmart task are a kind of classroom, treat it like a classroom. I've chosen this book because I think that is the most direct, one of the more direct discussions of philosophy. I think it's fairly lively. I discourage you from going and reading about what you read about in the book from other sources, because you don't know that I think that they are credible. You don't know that I think they're consistent with what Lawhead says. Yes, you have a right to your opinion, and others can say what they want, but it's like, playing a game of chess that I'm offering you and saying I want to play checkers if you go out and look at what other people have to say. And I'm not discouraging you from learning more, not at all, but just be really careful. I encourage you to make sense of what's given to you, because I've already chosen stuff that it's at a very basic level. So you might actually confuse yourself and make things more complicated, by going out onto the internet and, beyond to follow up on some stuff that you've read. Just master the basics that are in the book. If you need to discuss them with me, go over them with me, that's fine. We can do that during WebEx, phone call, whatnot. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about the Smart Book. I guess the one other thing that I want to iterate is that, I don't see the practice quiz as comprehensive enough, as detailed enough. I don't think it goes in depth enough. So just keep that in mind, that it's simply a way for me to offer you your lessons, right, about philosophy, about the theories. That's what it is. And then it has some little interactive review questions, which are not deep enough and not comprehensive enough as far as I'm concerned. But another way to think about that, you might be saying, well, why do it at all? Well, because you need a reading, you need lectures, right? It has, and it is interactive, so you're not just reading, so that's good. But you have to have lessons, and so that's the reading that I've chosen for you. That's why we do it anyway. And at the end of the day, you're earning some of your course grade by doing the reading and some simple review questions. So there you go. There's my take on your very first LearnSmart task, the Smart Book, quote-unquote, practice things. I did make some connections to something that is called, or known as, in epistemology and philosophy, as propositional knowledge. It's like factual knowledge, knowledge about something. Of course, I did forget to mention that there's something called skill-based knowledge. That's knowledge how. So you might know that an argument consists of a set of statements where a premise is supporting or intends to support a conclusion. That would be propositional knowledge. Now, your ability to apply that definition of argument to a passage and see what's a premise or conclusion, that's the skill-based knowledge. So I did make some points about that, at least in terms of propositional knowledge, and saying, that you need that to apply. Well, there's propositional knowledge that you apply to create skill-based knowledge. So I've made those points as well here, and just kind of want you to see where it's all coming together in my mind and the curriculum. And I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here because I've talked long enough.